What's up, everyone?
Hey.
Hey. So I'm just admitting with the new Zoom security features, everyone's put into a waiting room. And so sometimes I have to manually admit everyone. So that's what I'm doing now. But in the meantime, I posted the document that I'm going to go over. So the very announcement in which I posted the Zoom information, I also included a hyperlink to the document.
How's it going, Professor?
I'm fine, man. How are you?
Good. Just hanging in here.
Right on. Are you still at Stater Brothers, Jacob?
Sorry, I went to go close my door, but I actually left.
Did you?
Yeah, I left before it all hit the fan, so I don't feel too bad.
Okay.
Yeah. I
How are
was like
your?
saying, I got out right just in time.
Yeah. Did they have to lay anyone off?
No, I think they're looking for workers.
Wow, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, you
I
had
know.
yeah. Go
What
ahead.
happened?
Go ahead. What were
Oh
you?
no, I was gonna say I know. From the people I've talked to that I work with there, it's
Yeah,
like it was chaotic.
I could imagine. I could absolutely imagine. Right on. Well, it sounds like you're doing good.
hmm I'm just trying to hang in with school.
Yes.
I got accepted to Humboldt, and I just picked my dorm too, so I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna happen.
hmm I'm dorming with my cousin, actually.
Oh, right on. Oh, that's awesome news. Congratulations.
Thank you. And Ashling is across the hall from me, so
Oh, she's going to Humboldt too?
yeah.
Wow. Very cool.
hmm We're pretty excited.
Yes.
Hopefully everything gets better.
Yeah. Things will reopen, but there's just going to be intermittent. When waves hit, everything will just go on
Yeah.
lockdown.
hmm
So just be prepared for that. But otherwise, yeah. Yeah, you have a bright future for sure.
Well, thank you.
All right. So I'll just keep, I think, can we all see the Word document?
Yeah.
I can see.
Okay, cool. So what this document means, I've launched some new assignments, and the two theorists that we're going to focus on this week and next week is Reza Negarestani. If you've had me before, you're at least familiar with the name. And the second theorist is Catherine Hales. Catherine Hales is a bona fide scientist, but she's also very conversant in the philosophy of science. And Reza Negarestani is essentially a Renaissance human being. He can do anything. He can do comics. He can do poetry. He can write novels. He's a brilliant engineer. He's a brilliant AI theorist. etc. So this week and next week, we're entering our AI project, but we're starting at the theory section specifically for the AI project. And so I think you're going to enjoy this. So the focus of today really is just I'm going to show you the relevant information for kind of getting into thinking with both Negarestani and Hales, and then we can have a discussion, ask questions, make comments, and then Wednesday we'll go into the articles themselves by both Reza Negarestani and Catherine Hales. So right now it's learning how to think with them, and so I provided a lot of context to put you in a position to have a fruitful thinking session with these two theorists when you begin to read with them, because they're writing, they have a specific audience in mind, and the audience that both Hales and Negarestani write to have a kind of working conceptual architecture with some of these terms. So today we're going to talk about consciousness. We're going to talk about Hale's concept briefly. She's more of a proponent of non-conscious states, and the goal is to then see how these two theorists theorize what it means to be conscious, what it means to be non-conscious, how that fits within the overall field of neuroscience and artificial intelligence. Cool. So I believe everyone is here, but I'll keep adding you manually. So if I can see you, just we can see this document, correct? Just raise your hand if you can, like in front. Okay, very good. Cool.
Yep.
Right on. So the goal today really is to, if you look at the table of contents, we'll get to the plasticity in the human mind, and then we'll finish today. The goal is to get through here, plasticity of mind, to step 3, and then we'll save the theoretical concepts, which is a lot, but it's really, really dope stuff that is so relevant and will just enrich your reading and thinking experiences. So the goal for Monday today is just plasticity all the way to step 3, and then Thursday we'll read Negarestani and Hales closely, and then return to the theoretical concepts. You're more than welcome to obviously read ahead, but that's kind of how I'll scaffold this week. Cool? Right on. Okay, so let's just look at the plasticity of mind. This comes from Thomas Metzinger, who is a real important figure in artificial intelligence philosophy, and his most recent project is virtual reality. He feels that virtual reality should be more of a concern than artificial intelligence. So we're just going to read a little, and then if you want to, you know, throw in some thoughts about what you're hearing, etc., just please do. But the goal is to prepare us to think more deeply with our two theorists, and then for this week and next week. So here's plasticity in the human mind. One central result of modern experimental psychology is that human behavior can be strongly influenced by external factors, while the agent is totally unaware of this influence. Behavior is context sensitive, and the mind is plastic, which is to say that it is capable of being continuously shaped and reshaped by a host of causal factors. These results, some of which we present below, suggest that our environments, including technology and other humans, has an unconscious influence on our behavior. Is this controversial to any of you? Does this make sense to you?
It makes sense.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. Because even in my biopsych class, we were talking about how, you know, simple little things like stress can alter and change our DNA, which changes our way of thinking and all of that stuff.
Wonderful. Great. So we have, a totality of things, essentially. Totality in philosophy language means nothing is absent. So everything is there, from humans to non-humans, and this particular totality has causal efficacy, as Ashton nicely put, that things like stress can modify behavior at the DNA level. Is that what I heard you say, Ashton?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And it even goes further into like epigenetics, where it gets passed down hereditarily.
Awesome. And we're going to be getting into epigenetics in a couple of weeks. So that's awesome. Right on. So here we go. And the reason why we're going over this is to, you know, to think about how neurosciences think about the plasticity of the human mind, this notion of the unconscious, and Hales will we'll discuss this in our article, but kind of see building blocks about how the information about the plasticity in the human mind can inform, you know, deep learning, deep neural structures in AI research and design. All right, so here we go. For a more recent result showing the unconscious impact of environment on behavior, the amount of money placed, this is a scenario that researchers did to see, you know, is the unconscious even a real entity? So here we go. So for a more recent result showing the unconscious impact of environment on behavior, the amount of money placed in the collection box for drinks in a university break room was measured under a condition in which the image of a pair of eyes was posted above the collection box. With the eyes watching, coffee drinkers placed 3 times as much money in the box compared to the control condition with no eyes. Does that make sense? Yeah. You remember early on, I talked about like the big other in psychoanalysis, the name of the father. Here it is. Insofar as you think that there is some gazing at you, yeah, it will certainly modify behavior. Yeah, go for it.
This also kind of plays into I'm sorry, I don't remember who brought up 1984, but
Jude.
when Jude brought up 1984 and when they said Big Brother is always watching, it kind of reminds me of that, and how when we have that subconscious, like knowing that we're being watched and we should be expected to do something, it's more likely of an outcome of that action rather than when we don't have that heavy like feeling of being watched. It's more so just we act on our own free will rather than
Absolutely. Yeah.
having that forced, action.
Yes.
We also kind of see that conscious beings themselves judge for some reason, because we always have we project like something is watching and kind of interpreting our actions.
Yes.
Not as in the term judge, as in you think, okay, well, maybe it is based on some like abstract morals that this conscious observer has, but we're just saying judged in terms of somebody's watching our actions.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't feel right and sit with us. I mean,
yeah, so it could be a theological entity, it could be a political entity, but
yeah,
absolutely.
anybody that's watching, even
Absolutely.
something that's fake, because you can even just because they're just a pair of eyes, probably just a pair of paper eyes that are taped to the top of the box. Just because it's fake does not mean that people don't, think of that vicariously or some other way.
Absolutely.
Well, I feel, wouldn't this also kind of play into Sleep Dealer? How there's always the eyes that are watching the water, not letting them get to it. It's kind of controlling them in a sense that they know that they aren't supposed to go to the dam and get the water of their own free will.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And everyone should write, everyone should be taking notes. I mean, but what Ashton said, making the connection, all these connections are good. It's just Ashton kind of put a bow on it, in terms of finding that connective tissue between this and Sleep Dealer. It's absolutely key. Right on. So we'll just finish these here, and then if something kind of initiates more connections, just shout it out. So effects like this one may be particularly relevant in virtual reality or VR because the subjective experience of presence and being there is not only determined by functional factors like the number and fidelity of sensory input and output channels, the ability to modify the virtual environment, but also importantly, the level of social interactivity. For example, in terms of actually being recognized as an existing person by others in the virtual world. Now, for my gamers out there, this isn't really that, mind-bendingly novel. Phenomenologically, ongoing social cognition enhances both this reality and the self in their degree of realness. You know what that means? The degree of realness? Phenomenological. Yeah, go for it.
Is it something like the amount a person believes that their reality is what they're feeling?
Yes, that it's not so much insofar.
So they try and put themselves there.
Yes.
Is that so? Because that's what you do in VR. You try and imagine as much as possible that you're there. I mean, even if you say that, oh, no, I'm just still thinking it's a game, you still do it kind of a little bit.
You do. Yeah.
It's what's enjoyable about VR.
Absolutely. So rationally, consciously, that it isn't real, but nonetheless, you have to act as though it is real. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So there's this asymmetry between what the thing is versus how does one take the thing to be. And so to put a bow on this, this principle will also hold that the subjective experience of ongoing social cognition is of an hallucinatory nature. So even modulating or calibrating human behavior, your behavior in a social space, according to Metzinger, is of a hallucinatory nature, because you're acting as if no one may be looking at you, but you act as if someone is gazing at you. Does this make sense?
Hmm.
I would like to add, like, this also plays into, and the scene that comes into mind when thinking of Sleep Dealer
Yeah.
is when Luz is trying to record a certain memory of Memo,
Yes.
and the AI tells her to be more truthful. Like, the AI knows that she's withholding certain facts,
Yes.
and it's more so because Luz knows that, you know, she's just recording a memory to, if you want to say, like, this sort of memory bank to sell.
Yes.
But the AI is more self-aware of what Luz is doing, so it's like the AI knows that that wasn't what really happened. Like, there wasn't the reality of the situation, that there was more factual events that was happening that needed to be, I guess, noted.
Yes.
And so it kind of plays into the whole gamer situation, where we know that the events aren't real, but we have to immerse ourselves into the situations and what we're presented in order to get into that mindset,
Yeah.
to trick ourselves that it's actually real.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
I just had something to say.
Yeah, go for it, Joseph.
It's kind of playing with the idea that we ourselves could be in like a VR setting, for how easily our minds can believe like into like a VR. It's like, if you can believe that, do you think that your reality, or how much of your reality do you understand or
Okay,
see?
brilliant. And this is Hales, that consciousness conceptually should not be the benchmark by which we adjudicate or define what's real from not real. So being conscious of something, from Hale's perspective, is not a sufficient condition of knowledge, of realness, etc.
So would this be like the Matrix
It,
and opening up your mind with the pill to their reality?
yes, Metzinger was discussing the Matrix before. Actually, the Matrix comes from a dystopian type of romance novel called Neuromancer, and the designers of the film, the producers, were influenced by that novel, Neuromancer. But yeah, um, the Matrix definitely is part of it. Especially the idea that even though they know, like that scene where he's eating a steak and he knows it's fake, and he's like, even though I know it's fake, I'm still enjoying this. That's the beauty of the Matrix. All right, so okay, so we'll get to more this section. Does anyone have any more thoughts or questions or comments? So I'll kind of sum up, like, key here is from Brittany Ashton to Jude, making connections to Big Brother, from 1984 to biology, epigenetics, in terms of our DNA is open to external is vulnerable to external things that could enable it to kind of recode itself essentially. So we have a discussion of literature here. We have obviously connections to film through Sleep Dealer. We're making connections to biology, and this is very good. And then Joseph providing kind of that more tangible connective tissue that that there it could be the case that what we call social reality is we shouldn't use social reality as a benchmark in our consciousness of us being social agents within time and space as a way to champion consciousness, or to use consciousness to be conscious of something as the method by which we arrive at what's real and not real. And Hales is going to introduce, instead of consciousness, we should promote non-conscious. Okay, so here we go.
Quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. I like with the recent writings that we had about like the wave and adapting them to Harman and I forgot his name, or I just blanked out. But like adapting those ideas to the wave and other short stories that you have us. If we do something like this regarding like what these ideas and like philosophies are,
yeah,
I guess I had more trouble adapting their stories to the wave because it's like such a small corner, I guess, to see like, oh, this is Graham Harmon's, or yeah, like his idea towards the wave is like it's pretty much what it is, but it's like hard to expand on it, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it was just a short exercises in solidifying, being able to take something that if I didn't give you directions, you would read it in one way. You would just see it as Palomar, like looking at a wave and abandoning it. But small corners is important.
Okay, because I knew that the exercise wasn't made to be like impossible, but there was times where I was stuck on how to, I guess, put the pen to the paper kind of thing.
Yeah, you should feel stuck because it's
okay.
Yeah,
Because I was like, man, I'm really messing up here. I didn't really know like how to expand it as much as I could.
yeah, it was just an exercise.
Okay.
Yeah, so don't feel bad.
On the
Yeah, go for it.
were you basically saying so don't confuse social acknowledgement with the reality, right?
Yeah. Can you say that again?
Don't confuse social acknowledgement with reality.
Yes.
True reality.
Yes. Perfect. All right. Instead of like literature this time, you're going to be asked to look at a Black Mirror episode from the 3rd season, but I'm going to go over that. All right. So you notice that I have like N and H. So N is shorthand for Negarestani, and then H is for Hales. So both N and H work within the context of the philosophy of science. This tradition, broadly speaking, desires to make sure that what we know about ourselves and the world is absolutely justified. We want to get things right, in other words, as opposed to almost right. But how we go about doing that, just different methodologies. As you know, humans create new knowledge. We also get a lot of things wrong too. Nonetheless, one of the things we figured out in our intellectual history is the difference between describing something and explaining it. Does that make sense? Yeah? describing the sun as opposed to like, or describing what the sun is phenomenologically as opposed to like explaining its microphysical properties.
Mhm.
Yeah, like how Harmon was describing how the moon is the moon and not what you describe it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, the moon is more than a list of all the descriptions we can have of the moon. So phenomenology tries to describe our experience, and then science tries to explain stuff. They're not in the business of describing. Their goal is to arrive at an explanatory framework. Whether it succeeds or not, you know, but okay. In short, to explain X, say, is to explain what it is, its microphysical complexity, its structure, apart from how it appears. So does that make sense? How something appears to our senses is not identical to what the thing is at its microphysical structural level. Does that make sense to us? Yeah.
Is it kind of like the table? Like you can explain the table, see what it looks like and the properties of it, and then you can break it down on like a molecular level, saying what it's made out of and all of that stuff.
Totally. So even this plays out in Sleep Dealer, that the water conditions, the you know, just seeing the water kind of under this AI corporate gaze. Yeah, that's what it appears, but what's really happening is various you know, trade policies, supply chain issues. That's kind of what's left out. Like you see a gate, you see a camera, you know, ensuring that you are a good agent who's not going to blow it up or you know, turn into some type of terrorist. But missing from all that is government, corporate policies, etc. Does that make sense? Right on. You probably get. All right, so here we go. So in other words, we've learned there's a difference between water and H2O. Water, as it is known in everyday human experience, exists at the descriptive level. H2O is a result of scientific explanations. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to take this one? Why is water not identical to H2O?
Because there's so many different forms of water. You have ocean, river, rain, tap water, puddles, and then, but they're all made up of H2O.
Right. You're on fire, Ashton. Everyone's on fire.
Blood has a lot of water in it, so there's also other types of. There's always types of other water.
Yeah.
I mean, it just depends what's mixed in it at a molecular level, but that's, yeah, they're saying that you understand what water is. You kind of just understand sort of what its properties are, but that's it. Because you know everything that kind of is liquid
Yes.
that you're interacting with, anything that you can put in your body, and that's not gonna, that's got water in it too.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the video that you had us watch, how it explains that water is basically everything, and it's been here for billions of years.
Yeah. So it begs the question, what came first, water or H2O? You know what I'm saying? From a philosophical perspective, did water become water only when scientists figured out H2O, etc.?
I guess that would depend on the scientist.
Perfect.
Well, I mean, Yeah, no. If you had to even answer that in science, though, it would be no. It would be like water, because even like Neanderthals, cavemen, and everything, they knew what water was.
Yeah.
Everybody had to know what water was.
Yeah. So we kind of
So
started, yeah, with symbolic systems, kind of artistic descriptions of this kind of phenomenon that seems to be a source of life. So it's kind of inductive reasoning. Okay, there is water. Um, but then it's trying to figure out, okay, what if it is true that there is water, um, what can we know that's almost like a law about the various properties that are needed to make this particular thing?
yeah, and you somehow knew that you needed water, because I mean, we wouldn't have survived if we didn't.
Totally. And it did not, like this early knowledge of water, we were not, constructing scientific experiments in our mind. uh, we're making scientific inferences, right? It's like, oh, I have this kind of intuition that I may need this. We're reconstructing history here, but you get the idea, right?
Mm.
Okay. So the above difference, though, motivates several questions, as in, are we able to get to the real? Can we get to nature? Or are we stuck seeing the real in mediated form as though we are in a movie theater from which we cannot escape? If we can escape this so-called movie theater, what should we know about ourselves first to put us in a position to know the real? Does that make sense?
Would that be a difference between the conscious and unconscious?
Perfect. And what you mean, take us. Go, Osvaldo, take us.
Well, if you're conscious of the fact that you're in the movie theater, then you can leave or you can escape. I mean, but if you're unconscious to that fact, then you believe that to be the real, the movie to be the real.
Absolutely. All right. Good, good. So what's happening is, and Hales and Negarestani are working this, that um, Reza Negarestani is going to tell a story of like of a toy infant AI learning about itself, learning about the world, and it has that similar method of like, um, the history of humanity is an attempt to acquire true justified belief. And in this history, there's a lot of obviously pitfalls. But it always begins with, getting who we are right in order to know reality. It, does someone want to talk? Okay. So, well, if you do, you can interrupt at any time. So, is there a correlation between explaining who we are using the resources of the natural biological sciences and explaining the real? Right? Does the real become real when we can see ourselves as kind of a biologically transmitting, system? Um, so do you get this question, that the more that we see ourselves through the lens of the natural sciences or the biological sciences and the natural sciences, will that then correlate a to understanding the real as it should be, apart from how the real appears? We want to know the real, not not address the real as it appears. Does that make sense?
This kind of makes me think of like the debate between the mind and like the brain, how people believe that they're two separate things, but in biopsychology, it's basically coming down that it is just the brain. It is all one thing, but people try and separate it.
Yes. Yes. And
It's,
yeah, go for it.
it's also in relation to like the video about like where water comes from and how
Yep.
scientists have discovered that water does things that defies all logic and all scientific fact.
Perfect.
Just like there are parts that we won't know the real until we can figure out how to combine those two aspects
Yes.
to understand and see and bring those two aspects together and to realize that there are scientific explanations that are affected by the real that will create water that goes uphill,
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes. And so,
It's the combination of the two. We won't hit that next level of understanding until we allow ourselves to bring those two sides together and openly understand them.
yeah, that's brilliant. This is so brilliant what's happening. Yes. So rather than being guided by a we should be guided by the real and not the appearance of the real or the phenomenological experience of the real. And that union with the real, that no, the real dictates how it's conceptualized. We do not dictate how the real, right? So it's a change in the relationship, that the human doesn't determine the real. The real imprints itself on us in order for us to arrive at the appropriate understanding of it.
And that's all individually, right? That's like, because people try and describe their real to other people, and they
Yeah.
always try and, that's one of the things I was thinking about. What you were saying, it kind of makes sense. Honestly, but it's kind of the difference between what somebody, because I was trying to theorize about, okay, well, if you're just explaining your real, what is that? Just kind of thinking across languages and everything else. It's what you physically experience within yourself. It's talking about yourself in that aspect, correct?
Yes.
Versus what you know specifically scientifically about yourself or anything else that's been done through experiments. It's the difference between that. The real is what you know, what you experience, your reality.
Yes.
Well, this kind of makes me think a little bit too of how, unicorns exist in the sense that they are in books, in movies, just because they don't exist in like our real life, quote unquote, doesn't mean that they don't exist.
Absolutely. Good.
And here's a thought, because you're oh my God, I can't remember your name. It's a gentleman that was just talking.
Oh, Jude.
Jude, thank you. When you're talking about the real and how it's a personal interpretation, for now, yeah, it is your own personal interpretation, because we don't know what the real is. And it's once we get to that point where we can elevate our thinking and our wisdom and our intelligence. God, I don't want to sound so goddamn cheesy, but I'm going to sound cheesy.
No, it isn't.
Once humanity as a whole could hit nirvana, basically, that's when you can finally understand what the real is. None of us on Earth are there yet.
No.
It'll be a long time before we're there yet.
Right.
But that's kind of what I was trying to say, is that for now, yeah, it's our own personal interpretation of what the real is and how we connect that to the scientific logical world. At some point, hopefully, humanity will be able to elevate their learning, their understanding, and their wisdom to the point that we'll be able to understand the real. Because we're only doing, was it negative theology to explain what the real is?
Yeah.
but we don't know what the real is. Not yet. Hopefully someday we will. So yeah, for now, it's our own personal interpretation.
Yeah. Jude,
I don't know.
Abby.
Like, yeah, okay. So I don't know if it's gonna sound dumb, but I feel like the real kind of only exists within the biological sciences, and our brain not being able to, or us not being able to identify with the things we're made up of is the thing that causes us to complicate the situation. Because I feel like it like what is real is just the biological sciences. Like that's what makes it real.
Yeah.
And then we just overcomplicate it because we're so consciously aware. So
Yeah, because our experience of reality is mediated by metaphors and you know, and other representational systems. Absolutely.
And what we use to explain what we don't understand.
Absolutely.
Like what makes water, you know what I mean, ice float on water even though it's still H2O.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Or
Yeah.
you like medical mysteries when like somebody who should be dead is actually alive, or all of a sudden miraculously starts seeing again. What caused that? Medically, biologically, we can't explain it. So it must be the real. It must be a god. It must be a miracle. It must be whatever that we don't understand.
But I like with Abby too that the real only exists within the sciences, and then the idea that we're kind of our own anthropological journey of trying to get to the real has kind of remained stuck at a negative theology level. Mm-hmm. So our anthropological history has achieved some insight into like, well, the real it might be that, but we can't get there because any placeholder, well, that's not it. It's a placeholder, and we've kind of reached perhaps an inertia. You know. Okay, good. So, let's. Okay, that's good. And then you know, then I have some. Well, I'll return to kind of a more like capitalist realism. How does kind of a kind of global economic framework, you know, only accents this kind of virtual reality? But I'll return to this later. Okay. So if I'm going to scroll down, so more context to think with N and H. So here's where we kind of transition into what you could do starting after this Zoom until Wednesday. So on the one of the discussions, step one says it might be useful to watch a Black Mirror episode entitled Men Against Fire, which is the 5th episode of season 3. This is on Netflix. Said episode is a useful starting point to understand Negarestani's toy robot and Hale's concept of non-conscious. Has anyone seen this episode, by the way?
A long
I might have. I don't remember.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, that's
yeah. Like I've seen them all, but like I don't know.
Yeah,
they all blur. Seasons. They all blur.
Yeah, it's I kind of got bored of Black Mirror, but it's kind of the same old shtick. But this episode is frighteningly like dope and relevant. And so specifically, Men Against Fire explores the philosophical consequences of implant technologies and how they operate as a multifaceted aesthetic framework that composes an entire world of experience. So without like spoiling it for everyone, what they see bugs, insects, and killing insects, they ain't insects. You know what I mean? There are simulated projections of insects, but yeah. So hopefully you'll be able to watch that. And then after watching this episode, I provided a TED Talks from Thomas Metzinger, who's the kind of neuroscientist who's really theorizing virtual reality in a really robust way, as opposed to like a cliche way. So you can watch that brief presentation and then kind of analyze Metzinger's presentation in 5 sentences. Specifically, why should we take Metzinger's theory seriously? What is to be gained? So 5 sentences from there. So step 1 would be watching Men Against Fire, Netflix, Black Mirror, kind of taking notes, then watching a TED Talk by Thomas Metzinger, kind of taking notes, responding to these questions. These are okay, right? These are doable for us? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's fun too. In my opinion, it's fun.
It's not like a link to your personal Netflix account, is it? I just thought it was a link, so I thought it was funny.
Yeah, probably.
No,
But I it's kind
it
of.
won't come with a cookie. It won't. You're good. He's good.
Yeah, you'll hack in and. But I'll know it was you, Joseph, because you just told on yourself. All right.
Start seeing Family Guy on the.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, like what?
Set up a new profile.
Yeah.
Hey, I made a profile with no name one time. Those guys were, they were like, "Whoa," they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Oh, I feel you. Yeah. All right. So step 3, in 5 sentences, you'll compare the below theoretical concepts, and there's like 25,000 of them. And we can start maybe some of them today, and then we can have a brief discussion, and we can bounce. So in 5 sentences, compare the below theoretical concepts definitions with any previous reading, discussion, and or sleep dealer. So you can be incredibly comprehensive, or you can just focus on one thing. Does that make sense?
So do you want 5 sentences for each one, or just 5 sentences in total?
I think I have them like where it's like, explain this in a sentence, explain this in 2 sentences. But yeah, it's up to you. Oh, I get it. Like the 5 sentences, yeah, total. Yeah, these are just like little bread.
It's like a paragraph, pretty much, sort of. That's about 5 sentences.
Yeah.
But that's like okay, but you can do a little bit more if you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are just breadcrumb exercises to put you in a position to, when we get to the reading material, you'll have a working conceptual map. So I don't want to overburden you here, because the reading will kind of invite you to like take it slowly. Then in 2 to 3 sentences, how do said concepts modify, challenge, critique, enhance your own experience of self? That is, who you take yourself to be. So we have amnestic re-embodiments, counterfactual content, epistemic agent model, epistemic innocence, and it kind of goes on. So we can save step 3 for Wednesday if you want, and then use these as an entry point into like close readings of Negarestani and Hales. Does that make sense? Anyone?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right on. So I'm not, you know, when you read these like little definitions, you know, don't feel bad if you're like, what? I'm not gonna like test you on this, but it's just important to have some exposure to these concepts when you begin to read Negarestani and Hales. Just a little bit of exposure to these concepts will enrich your reading. But the goal is not to master these or to become like, you know, to memorize them. It's just, you know, more concepts, the better. Cool?
Yeah,
Mhm.
cool.
Right on. Cool. So that's pretty much for today. And then we can, Wednesday we'll just be busy with going over the Black Mirror episode, the Metzinger TED Talk, and then like going into the actual readings themselves. I think it could be like really fun by making massive connections to these different pieces within the class's overall framework. Any comments, questions?
So I looked up something when you were talking about all of this, because I was just curious. You were speaking. I don't know if you said something about language, but I was wondering, kind of. Well, it was change within the next. Somebody said something about change within the next, like, if so we can elevate to a higher plane of his existence, something like that, right?
Yes.
So I was just like, well, thinking about people changing in that sense. When was the last change humans went through? I was kind of looking at that. And the funniest thing is that when I was looking back at kind of human genealogy, I was wondering when was all of this happening? When I looked it up, it was the first link said, what was the greatest human technology? Innovation, fire, the wheel, penicillin, clothes, Google. None of these come close. As you read this, you are using the winning technology. The greatest tool in the world is language. Without it, there would be no culture, no literature, no science, no history, no commercial enterprise or industry. The genus Homo really rules the earth because it possesses language.
Yeah.
But how and when did we build this kingdom of speech? And who is we, after all?
Yeah.
Homo sapiens is just one of several species of humans that have walked the earth. Does we refer to our genus, Homo, or to our species, sapiens? So it's kind of like that's one of the things that kind of goes with what we're talking about right there. It's kind of we know that as a personal kind of relationship that we experience, right? We say we.
Yes.
But what does that exactly refer to? That's where science goes and drills down into it.
There you go. Precisely because language enabled us to construct this notion of we, to kind of give us an impression that we are somebody. Metzinger is going to argue that we are nobody. No one's home. There is no self. It is a necessary illusion.
I see.
Yeah. So some of you, my gaming students, are going to like love this dude. And he kind of throws in some Buddhist elements too. So he's part of what's called eliminative materialism. Eliminative materialism is a proposition in which to abandon this concept of self because it's doing more harm than good, and to see ourselves through the vocabulary of neuroscience. Yeah.
That makes
But-
sense.
Yeah. And yeah, so the history of language is it's quite fascinating, as Jude did a nice job kind of giving us information that kind of summed up that our goal is to get to use language in order to get outside of language to get to the real, but that's a necessary fantasy of language itself. So language users like to pretend as though they are not constrained by language in order to get outside of it, but that's a necessary condition of language itself to create the fantasy that you can get outside of it, but you can't. But science is telling an alternative story. It's like, yes, we can, but certain conditions have to be met. Namely, you have to give up these, what they call folk psychology. We have to abandon our folk psychologies, which is to abandon our entire anthropological history. Good luck with that. You know, we can't even get people to wear masks. What, you know, to invite people to renounce this notion of self. I mean, come on. But it's a worthy entry point into a philosophical field that doesn't get much play. Cool. So that's virtually it. And then if you need, as it relates to the wave assignment, if like you need more time to do it, go for it. My grading day, I'll be like feverishly grading tomorrow. So I apologize for the delay, but as long as you're like turning stuff in, shoot, I'm proud of you. given all this, but otherwise this is just kind of for today. Any other comments or questions?
Where is this document located in Canvas?
So if you go into, let me see.
The one that he's looking at right now.
Yeah.
Oh, you put it under announcements. It's linked to the Zoom call, and you put content for today's Zoom call.
The document that I was reading. Did you ask that question, Nathan?
Yes.
Okay. So was your question in reference to what I was reading today?
Yes, the one that's on your screen right now. Yeah.
So if you go to Canvas and look at the most recent announcement, I provided a hyperlink to the document.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Cool. So Wednesday should be fun. So do as much as you can given what's happening. But Wednesday should be really spectacular. And today was brilliant. I'm super impressed. I'm always impressed after I leave these Zoom meetings, but now's the time to really devote oneself to the intellect. And I'm just super proud of everyone. So find some time to like chip away at these introductory exercises, and then Wednesday should be really terrific. Cool.
Are we going to go back to Harman's theory or philosophies, or are we kind of over that already?
Oh God, I want to move on. Harman will inevitably make a reappearance, but my God.
It's a handful of too. And like there isn't really a lot of people on YouTube like discussing his theories.
No, because
So
they all hate him, so they're like, "F this guy."
so like listening to it, like going to listen to him, it's like a 2-hour video of him like.
I think he's just asking, is the final cumulative?
What would say that again?
I was thinking he was just asking, is the final cumulative?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So if we're gonna be still, if it's cumulative, then we still got to remember Harmon and that stuff.
Remember Harmon, but we're moving on to like, when we read Negarestani and Harmon hate each other. They had this. This is kind of like weird, like, but Negarestani and Harmon had this massive Twitter war, in which they blocked each other. It was juvenile, but like kind of dope.
Damn.
Negarestani hates Harmon. I mean,
Watch they start writing some piece about like the block and what that symbolizes.
oh, dude, and I have all these saved, man. I mean, it's I'll put them on an announcement. But yeah, but we're going to be reading, like, Negarestani absolutely hates Harmon, and not Harmon the person, but the whole philosophical system. He just says it's utter bullcrap. But if you're a Harmon fan, you'll figure out maybe the arguments as to why Negarestani would feel that way. But we'll save that for Wednesday. But yeah, we're gonna try to put Harmon in timeout in the meantime. But if you see connections, I mean, don't feel guilty about that.
I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm kind of happy about that.
Yeah. Me too. Right on. So if we go, is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll catch you next time.
Yeah. So I'll see you Wednesday, and just do what you can for that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, yo. Just stay sane and safe.
For sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
Later, Professor.
Yeah.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Later.